Good morning. We are starting Chapter 9. So Chapter 9, we are moving into probability. We're moving into statistics. So 9.1 is probability of simple events. I do want to let you know ahead of time that we are not going to be completing the got it's today because of how many examples I put in the notes. Also, if you are going through the notes and you're feeling pretty good about it, like with the video, then you can pause the video, and then at the top of your Google Classroom where it says classwork, it says math notes, and it's not a video, but it's the math notebook. You can open that, get to 9.1, and just copy them from there. But always start with the videos, make sure you're kind of feeling comfortable with it, and then you can go look there if you are okay with it. But I'm going to try to keep this video shorter than the past ones. It's a goal of mine for this next set of NTI days. So again, I'm going to move quickly, pause wherever you need to. We are not completing the got it's today. All right, so we've got key vocab words. We've got probability and we've got simple event. Probability, the chance that an event will occur. So probability of flipping heads or tails. Well, the probability of getting heads is 50%. Probability of getting tails is 50%. When we think probability, we often think percentages. We will be doing decimal, percent, and fraction today. Simple event, one outcome or a collection of outcomes. So flipping heads or tails, that's a simple event. So the probability of an event is a ratio that compares the number of favorable outcomes to the number of possible outcomes. So if we're talking about the probability of flipping heads, well, there's only one heads. That's only one side of a coin out of two sides. So the fraction of probability of getting heads would be 1 over 2. 1/2, 50%. 0.50. So that's the fraction, decimal, and percent. The probability of a chance event is any number between 0 and 1. So a fraction, it's between 0 and 1. We're not talking mixed numbers, right? What's the, if you eat a whole pie, we've eaten 100% of it. So the probability of that, if that were a probability, would be 1, right? Probability can be written as a fraction, decimal, or percent. So if it's a 50-50 chance of rain, then it's as likely to happen as it is not to happen, right? But if it says there's 0% chance of rain, then it's not going to happen. But if there's 100% chance of rain, then it's raining, right? All right, so example 1. There are 6 equally likely outcomes of a number cube. So a number cube, a die. With sides labeled 1 through 6. Find P parentheses 6 means find probability of rolling a 6. So how many 6s are on that dice? Well, there's only one 6, right? But how many sides are there? There are 6 sides. So the probability of rolling a 6, that's one side of a die out of 6 sides. So it's 1/6. So your fraction would be 1 over 6, right? Your decimal is 0.16 repeating, and your percent, in this case, we would round it because it's 0.1666, so we would say about 17%. If you do about 16.6 repeating percent, that's fine, but typically you can just round up to the nearest whole percent. Alrighty. Now it says find the probability of rolling 2 dice and getting double 6s. So that means in this case, you've got one dice and you've got another die, right? That means you've got to roll a 6 here, which would be 1/6. And to get, another 6, double 6s, that means you've got to get a 1 out of that 6 on the other die. So the probability of getting a 6 on the first one is 1/6. The probability of getting a 6 on the second one is 1/6. But you've got to do both because you've got to get them at the same time. So the probability of the first one, 1/6, and the probability of the second one. That word and is going to mean multiply. So you will be multiplying those two fractions. Now it's super duper important. So if you want to highlight, circle, star, square, do something so that this pops out at you, go ahead and do that. The word and means multiply because we're going to hear something else in just a minute. So, oh, and I've got it written down here again. That means that we've got 1/6 for the first die, 1/6 for the second die, but because you've got to get them at the same time, you've got to get 1/6 and 1/6. So we multiply. Well, 1/6 times 1/6, do not tell me it's 1/12 or 2/12, right? 1 times 1 is 1. 6 times 6 is 36. So the probability of rolling double sixes, which means a 6 and a 6, is 1 out of 36. Now here's where it changes. So example 2, find the probability of rolling a 2, 3, or 4 on a number cube. So the word and meant multiply, right? Now we've got the word or instead of multiply means we need to add. Alrighty, so find the probability of rolling a 2, a 3, or a 4. That means we write it P parentheses 2, 3. We include the word or because just like the word and, it's super duper important. Up here, we could have written probability of 6 and 6. Here, we'd have to write probability of 2, 3, use the word or 4, because or is going to tell us to add. So, the probability of rolling a 2 on a number cube, well, that's 1 side out of 6. Probability of rolling a 3 on a number cube, well, that's 1 side out of 6 sides. Probability of rolling a 4, 1 side out of 6 sides. And because it says or, that means we're going to add our fractions. Now, because we have common denominators, we're fine to keep our denominator, but our numerator is 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. And so when we write our fraction, we're going to, you can write your original 3/6, but you're also going to simplify it, 1/2. So our decimal is 0.5, our percent is 50%. So super duper important is highlighting that the word or means add. Or means add, and means multiply. Alrighty, complementary events. Complementary events, 2 events in which either one or the other must happen, but they cannot happen at the same time. So that's kind of a weird way to say it, but if you flip and land on heads, well, then the other option is to not land on heads, right? So landing on heads and not landing on heads are 2 complementary events because you cannot do both of them at the same time. You can't land on heads and at the same time not land on heads. So complementary events are 2 things that cannot happen at the same time, which means the sum of the probability of an event and its complement is 1 if you're talking decimals, or 100 if you're talking percents. So the probability of landing on heads, well, that's 50%. The complement of landing on heads is not landing on heads, which would then mean tails, and that's 50%. So 50% plus 50% equals 100%. So a complement would be, so if you had, let's see, those, if you had a bag of marbles, and 5 of the marbles, 5 out of 20, were blue. Well, if I asked for the complement of pulling out a blue marble, or a complement of probability of pulling out a blue marble, well, pulling out a blue marble would be 5 out of 20. The complement is the opposite, so not pulling out a blue marble. So it would be 15 out of 20. And we know 15 out of 20 plus 5 out of 20 is 20 out of 20. So those complements, pulling out a blue and not pulling out a blue, the probability of those two added up to 100%. So let's do another example of complementary. It says find the probability of not rolling a 6 in example 1. So example 1 said, what's the probability of rolling a 6 on a number cube? Well, the number 6 is one side out of 6 sides of a die. So the probability of rolling a 6 was 1/6. The complement of rolling a 6 is not rolling a 6. So what's the probability of not rolling a 6? Well, there are options, right? You could roll a 1, you could roll a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. So that's 5 options out of 6 to not roll a 6. So 5/6 is our fraction. Our decimal is 0.83 repeating. So then our percent would be about 83%. So rolling a 6 and not rolling a 6 are two complementary events. You can't roll a 6 and not roll a 6 at the same time. The complement of the probability of it raining is it not raining. Now, this is an example that's not a complementary event. So rolling a die and getting a 1 or a 2. Those are not complementary events, because if you roll a 1 and rolling a 2, well, you can also get a ton of other things, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6. So it's got to be this or that. So the blue marbles or not the blue marbles. It doesn't have to be super specific. It's just this or not this, right? Let's do example 4, sorry. Mr. Smith surveyed his class and discovered that 30% of his students have blue eyes. Okay? 30% of his students have blue eyes. Identify the complement of this event and then find its probability. Well, if we're talking about having blue eyes, the complement, think kind of like the opposite, is not having blue eyes. So, what is the probability of not having blue eyes? Well, if 30% have blue eyes, well, 100% minus 30% would be 70% don't have blue eyes. So that's our percent, our decimal, 0.70, our fraction, 7 out of 10. Always give it in simplified form. So you could have written 70 over 100, but then simplify it to 7/10. Mutually exclusive events. 2 or more outcomes of an event that cannot occur at the same time. So this one's different than complementary. Complementary is this or that. Mutually exclusive means, they're also complementary events are mutually exclusive, right? But it would be more like, instead of saying what's the complement, it would say, are these two mutually exclusive? So the example would be picking a card from a deck and choosing an ace or a king. Well, if you're picking a card out, that means you're picking out one card. It can't be an ace or a king at the same time, right? But you could pull out a red card and a king, because a king can be red. So that's kind of a strange concept. It takes a minute possibly to wrap your head around. You won't have anything in your homework that talks about mutually exclusive events specifically, but it's something to be aware of. So that is it for our notes. Your homework tonight is pretty basic. It's going to talk to you a lot about find the probability of spinning red on this spinner. So if there's 1 red, but there are 8 spots, it would be 1 out of 8. And then you are going to be writing it as a decimal, a fraction, or a percent. So start your homework. Take a look at the answer key. Obviously, let me know if you have questions, comments, concerns. I'll be around. If you need to Zoom anytime for any questions, comments, or concerns, please do so. You're not tackling this alone. I'm here to help. Alrighty, day 1 back. As a reminder, we have a field trip, virtual field trip tomorrow, so you will not have any math work other than the field trip to complete. Have an awesome day.